I hate talking about PMS. It's a collection of different symptoms, and it's been bundled together into this condition called PMS. But PMS it's not inevitable. You don't have to feel bad right before your period. People experience it differently. So it could be pain, it could be craving, it could be bloating, it could be anxiety, it could be depression, it could be issues with the skin. But PMS is not inevitable. It's not an inevitable part of having a period and having a menstrual cycle.
Welcome to the Wildflow podcast with me, Charlotte Puanto, certified cycle and feminine embodiment coach and shamanic womb guide. In this podcast, I'll share my wisdom and conversations with powerful change makers, thought leaders, and embodied teachers to invite you to live cyclically in flow with your menstrual cycle instead of fearing it, to heal menstrual shame and normalize womb wisdom and period positivity, and to step into your sovereign magnetic power to create and embody the change you desire to see in your world. Settle in to unleash your wild flow. Before we dive into this juicy conversation, I'd like to remind you this is the last chance to apply for the First Moon Circle Facilitator training for the whole of 2023. We've got just the last few places available, and applications are closing on Friday the 24th of March 2023. If you have ever wanted to share the wisdom, the magic, the power of menstrual cycle awareness, of periods, of puberty, of the wisdom of the cyclical body with children, then I invite you to join us. We are calling you in. We need you, and your community needs you now to help them to move smoothly through a really important life transition. If you are thinking, wow, I'd love to do that work, but I don't have the skills, I don't know enough, I've never worked with children, I've never run an event, I don't even have a business, or you've been doing this work with adults, but you really want to share this in an age-appropriate, safe, special, empowering way with children, then this is for you. Come and join us. Applications are available at www.firstmooncircleschool.com/training and also in the show notes. I really hope to read your application soon. And if this year isn't for you, we do have a wait list, so make sure that you join that to receive news, updates, a free gift, and to receive the first invitation to join the 2024 training at the end of the year. I hope you'll join us. Okay, on to today's podcast. If you're struggling with period problems, you might be wondering why some women love their period and their menstrual cycle, and you might be questioning whether you too can have a better period. Lanice Brothers is my guest today, and she's here to share her tips for helping you to improve your hormone health, which in turn can improve your menstrual health. Her mantra is eat, love, move, and it's giving people a path to walk along to help them to learn about their body, to heal, and to love their body and cycle. In this conversation, Lanice and I meandered through topics including Lanice's personal journey from a family history of difficult periods to healing and then specialising in women's health. Why she invites women to eat, love, and move their way to better health. Her book, You Can Have a Better Period, and what I loved about it. Why she believes so many people are struggling with painful periods and other unpleasant, sometimes debilitating menstrual cycle symptoms right now. What's normal and not normal in terms of periods, and when you should be looking for help. The foundations to good menstrual well-being, and why Lanice invites women to share their own period stories over on her podcast. So let me introduce you to Lanice. Lanice Brothers is a yoga teacher and a registered nutritionist. She specializes in women's health, hormones, and the menstrual cycle. Lanice works with women through their menstruating years, perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. She set up her private nutrition practice, Eat, Love, Move, to help empower and educate women to understand their bodies and to advocate for better healthcare and to heal. Lanice is also the host of the Period Story podcast, which aims to break taboos around menstrual health, hormones, perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. Lanice has helped hundreds of women improve their menstrual and hormone health through her private practice and group programs. She's active over on Instagram. She does talks and workshops for all kinds of high-profile organizations, and her first book, You Can Have a Better Period, was released in March 2022. So let's dive in. Welcome, Lanice Brothers, to Wild Flow. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm great. The sun is shining here in London, and I'm always a bit better when it's sunny.
Oh, I so hear you on that. You must be coming towards the end of a really long winter and just coming out into first glimpses of spring.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely someone who chases the sun. And I talk about that in my work a lot, just like chasing light. And so yeah, I'm always great when it's sunny outside. Yeah.
Oh, we're just coming to the end of summer here in Australia, and I can just tell that the days are getting a bit longer. Sorry, the days are getting a bit shorter, and the sun's starting to,
Mm,
it's not up for as long, and it's the heat's dropping, and it's sort of like, oh, goodbye summer. But also, I'm really looking forward to a bit of autumn, like the pace slowing down a little bit as well. I feel
yeah.
like so,
Yeah.
yeah. And I feel like this is a good start for us to drop into our cycle check-in. So I'll just carry on that theme from here and then invite you to share your cycle check-in if that's okay with you. So for me, I'm mid-cycle. I'm day 12 now, and I'm just feeling like I've got this huge rise of energy where I feel like I've had a really, really busy week, and normally I would never take on that much, and I would like be feeling completely exhausted by now. But I've just got this sense of energy that's carrying me through, and this capacity um, to show up and to do things well and to parent my kids as well, and with a bit of like compassion, and feel like I can be I'm in my good mothering phase as well. It sort of combines. So but now I'm really enjoying that ovulatory feels, that inner summer feels, and it's lovely. But yeah, it won't be that long before it starts to dip. So for now I'm just enjoying it. um yeah, and it's evening time here. So yeah, it's sort of, the kids are asleep now, and it's quiet in the house, and I feel like I can just drop into a kind of slowness and just come back to myself and be like, so how are you again after this busy day? And I really enjoy the evenings for that. So yeah, that's like where I'm at in my menstrual cycle, and the seasons and the day, and the moon that we share is, where are we? We are between the first quarter moon and the full moon. So in that growing energy phase as well, which is no doubt supportive. So yeah. And how about you, Lanice? Do you want to share with us a cycle check-in, whether that's something that you relate to through a menstrual cycle, if you have one, or in any other way, and just how you're feeling today in that?
Yeah, so I just finished my period a couple of days ago. So I'm feeling really good. I can feel the change in my energy level. I'm feeling really like ready to jump back into being in the world. I've had a really busy week this week, lots of in-person workshops, lots of teaching, and actually it's been perfect for where I am in my cycle because I feel, quite ready to be out, be connecting with people, feeling that kind of rise of estrogen, that rise in testosterone, which is kind of making me want to take more risks and be kind of more confident. So yeah, just finished my period and like a couple of days ago, and I just love this phase of my cycle where, going into inner inner spring and follicular phase. It's just lovely, especially now because I am I'm 43 and I'm perimenopausal. Like I For the last couple of months I've been talking about being in perimenopause denial, but yesterday I had a breakthrough. I was teaching a workshop about perimenopause and I just said I'm no longer in denial. I am perimenopausal. I I have been having these really horrible migraines for the last 6 months. Not every cycle, but about like 4 cycles out of six, I've had a migraine either 2 days before my period or 2 days, the day 1 and 2 of my period. And so it's been really great to kind of come out of the other side of that. But putting my practitioner hat on, being I had to approach this with a lot of curiosity because okay, I'm perimenopausal. This is like a big symptom of perimenopause, migraines. What am I going to do about it? That's kind of really been fascinating, being able to say, okay, here are some solutions. Let's figure this out. So that's where I am in my cycle.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. That's fascinating. So there's a few things in there. One, I really relate to that feeling of coming out of your period and being like, ah, I'm back, and
Yeah.
all the energy, all the things, all the fun. But hearing you as well saying that you have been in denial of perimenopause, but now you have just kind of accepted and embraced that. Like that's a big step. That's huge. So
I
yeah.
wouldn't say embrace is not the word that I would use.
Okay. Not embraced.
It's
Yeah.
it's an acknowledgement that this is the
Acknowledgement.
phase of life that I'm now in.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Speak,
Yeah.
yeah, acknowledging and hearing as well in that you're also that's so interesting, because you are a practitioner and you work with other people and you can see maybe quite objectively when it's other people like, well, these are the signs and this is what's going on and let's do this. When it's yourself, there's so much more like and you're a bit more you're in it, so being able to
Yeah.
see that clearly, I can imagine for you with your approach, like your approach to the health side of menstruation and obviously perimenopause too, being much more like, when you connect those dots, it's like, okay, and now you've got the tools and the knowledge to be able to work with that. That's really cool. Mm.
Yeah. It's really interesting kind of thinking about how I got to this point because for so long there was two things. I didn't want to talk about my age because I felt like I had to kind of because I know like I look young and I felt like I had to kind of play into that
Mm.
to be able to be legitimate in this menstruation space. Like, oh, she's probably in her 30s. Yeah, she definitely has her period, so she has credibility to talk about that. Well, I know it sounds crazy saying it out loud, but these stories that we tell ourselves. Um, and then, the other part of it is just being able to say my age and know that yes, I'm 43. This is a phase of life, but also to know that it doesn't take away from any credibility that I have in this space, but also to show the different faces of perimenopause. It doesn't
Mm.
look the same way. You shouldn't have this expectation that you're in your 40s and, you're going to be a wrinkled mess, which is kind of, I think that's what I thought. And I'm telling on myself a little bit here, and aren't I?
Yeah, I love it. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your openness and your transparency. I think it's really important that we can have these conversations, and I'm sure that people are listening going to be like, thank you, like she said it, like thank you, like, it's so important. And gosh, I hear you on what you just said there about the credibility side of things. So for the first few years of me doing menstrual cycle work, I didn't have my period. I was pregnant and breastfeeding, and like patiently waiting my cycle for my cycle to return, just thinking like, God, can I do this? Can I like help others if I'm haven't got it myself? But you know, absolutely, it's not all about, you can share from your own experience, and that be something that's valid and a useful like relating and teaching experience. But being able to, what you said there about being able to welcome in the full spectrum and the diverse experiences that people have, and that it doesn't look the same, and that no one is better or more valid or less valid than the other. I think it's like, yes, like amen, like thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just showing that what I think is really interesting is that this kind of comes with a shift in the way that people are communicating. Like if you look at social media, whereas maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, Instagram, Pinterest, it was all about kind of everything being perfect, very aesthetic. Whereas now, when you look at, it's like TikTok being like a very like rapidly growing platform, people want messiness, they want realness, they want authenticity, and that's coming through on Instagram as well. People don't want you to be hiding behind like a perfect image or filters. Like people will call that out, and I think you know that that's really quite powerful in terms of the way that we communicate, the way we talk about periods, the way we talk about menstrual health, that this is part of real life, and we change, we go through these phases. And yeah, I guess it's just I that's part of one of the reasons why I feel very kind of more confident speaking
Mm.
about my personal experience in this transition.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for doing that. I think it's so important, and I'll be, yeah, following along and as you share and go through your journey. Mm. So that's an interesting point to start, because the first question that I had like made a little note for myself that I wanted to ask you was, I was thinking about that expression, healer, heal thyself. And that's what you just talked about, really. But
Yeah.
I'd love to ask you to just share with us what brought you to doing menstrual cycle work, because I feel like people who do this work, and particularly the maybe like the healing, like the health side of things, have come to this work for a reason, from your own experience. And I would just love to ask you to share with us, if you're happy to, what brought you to do this work, like why is this so important to you?
Yeah, so it's exactly that. A lot of people in this space, they have their personal stories. Like, they have a healing crisis that brings them to kind of fork in the road where it ends with them changing careers or having a
Mm.
big epiphany. And for me, that it's the kind of genesis of all of this is when I got my first period. It was very painful. It was very heavy. But I thought it was normal because that was the experience of my mom, my grandmother. Yeah, I was seeing her going through having terrible perimenopausal symptoms. Like she was having horrible hot flashes, sweating all the time. And so I grew up thinking this is what it's going to be like. So when my period arrived, very painful, very heavy. What I now know is mild endometriosis, but I thought, okay, well, that's normal. And then I saw the experience of my friends where they were kind of sailing through their periods. They weren't in the kind of agony that I was. And I started to think, okay, well, what's going on here? I convinced my mom to take me to the doctor. My family is very it's not anti-doctor, but there's a distrust of doctors and kind of conventional medicine for a variety of different reasons. But I finally convinced my mom to take me to the doctor. The doctor wanted, I was 15, but the doctor wanted to put me on the pill at 15, which now I think is absolutely wild.
Mm.
Um, and I got the prescription, which knowing my mom actually surprises me that she agreed to this. Um, and then they also gave me really strong painkillers. So in Canada, there's these strong painkillers called naproxen. And I took the painkillers. I didn't take the pill properly because I just kept forgetting. So, it just, yeah, I can't say whether it worked or not for me at that time because kept forgetting to take it. But the strong painkillers did because I would take a lot of them. And then over the years, I started kind of experimenting with different aspects of my health. I became a vegetarian for 15 years, and that actually sent me deeper into kind of health issues, anxiety, depression, because I wasn't nourishing myself properly. I was a bad vegetarian. And I'm being very honest today.
I'm loving it.
And then over time, I got into my career. I worked in advertising for a long time, dealing with all of these other still having very painful periods, still having heavy periods, kind of cobbling together solutions. And then it all kind of came to a head when I had my son. And I thought, I can't work in this career anymore because I can't be the mom that I want to be. Wouldn't it be interesting if I did something in health? Because I had always had this interest for such a long time because of my own experience. I decided to retrain as a nutritionist, then got my yoga teacher training qualification. And then when I was studying, my lecturers, they said, you have to specialize in something. You can't be everything to all people. It just won't work. I thought originally that I was going to go into specializing in gut health because I still find it absolutely fascinating. But then I thought, well, why don't they say when you're writing a book, write what you know. Well, why don't you specialize in what you know? Because, the passion will really come through. And so that's kind of the potted history of how I got into this space.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that, do what you know and the passion comes through. I think that's really good little nugget of wisdom there for people too. But yeah, I think it's really interesting that your path, there's quite a few similarities with mine as well. And I won't go into the full thing, but I was put on the pill at 16 for heavy periods and like I had really bad skin and yeah, really painful heavy bleeds. That was just awful. So, the pill is just what you do culturally, right? It's just what everyone was doing. So um, and it was only when I became a mum that I realized that I had this thing called a menstrual cycle. Um, and I have a degree in biology, right? And we barely covered the menstrual cycle in 3 years at uni. Like we did the tiniest, and it was just like, like what it looks like, what the hormonal um system is about, but nothing more like just then we went into a bit of reproduction biology, but it was just so basic and so it's almost like it kind of shocks me really to think about that. So yeah, it was only later on that I was like, what is this thing about,
Yeah.
when I came off the pill and it all came back. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And you talked in there as well about how you did, you've got your nutrition training, and your yoga teacher training as well. And your business is like it's eat, love, move. So I'm
Mhm.
really interested, like why you brought those three elements together. Why those things? How do they make a difference to mental health?
Because when I was, the name kind of came up. I was talking to my husband, and this is about 10 years ago now. I was talking to my husband about, oh, should I start on Instagram? I want it to be about health. I just want it to be about all the things that I'm doing, the things that I'm learning in my training. Um, and we were just playing around with names. And he was like, well, why don't you just make it really simple? People, when advertising, we talk about rule of threes, people remember three, well, they will remember three things. And we were kind of like, well, it's about eating, it's about moving. And then I was like, well, what could be the third be? Third be. And then I was thinking and thinking, and have self-love, self-compassion, the way we talk to ourselves, the way we tend to our nervous system is so powerful. And isn't that kind of a form of love? So how could we combine the three? And I'm very aware of, like, eat, pray, love. It's not
Mm.
that. Yeah. But it is like eat, love, move. And I felt like that was a really good encapsulation of everything that I talk to my clients about, everything that I try to communicate um, in social media, in everything I do.
Mm. Yeah, it's a lovely name, and like you say, it's really memorable. And it also really, when you talked about the love part, that's the feeling that I got from it as well, that it would be about I thought, I wonder if this is, that, like you say, the self-love, the way that we nurture ourselves and look after ourselves in our relationship with ourselves. So yeah, that's really cool. And I love that you bring that into your work as well. Like it's not just I think there's a lot of assumptions that maybe in our culture, like more widely, that you can just kind of have like a supplement or a pill or something, and it's going to kind of fix everything. And what I get from you is that it's much more holistic than that, and you're really trying to encourage people to look after their bodies and on these multi-dimensional layers as well. So yeah, I'd love to hear some more about that. Um, and let's talk about your book. So your book that you released last year, it's called "You Can Have a Better Period," and I think that's like, you know, I think that's really kind of be so reassuring for so many people to hear who are just like, am I going to be stuck with this like terrible experience forever? So tell us about your book, why you wrote it, and yeah, what it's about.
Yeah. So I wrote it because I knew that I had a different perspective to share. There are other books about periods out there in the market, but I had my take on all of this is very practical. You with food, we eat 3 meals a day. We have three opportunities to add in foods that are going to support our health every single day. We move our bodies, we breathe, we're in communities. How can we do things in a really simple, practical way that in all of those areas that will get us on, move us down the line to improving our overall menstrual and hormonal health? And I basically took everything that I do in my practice and I poured it into this book. I wanted it to be something that someone could pick up, and they didn't necessarily have to read it from cover to cover, but they could dip in and out of it based on whatever phase of their cycle that they were in. Oh, these are the foods that I can add in during this time. oh, these are the supplements that will be really helpful. Oh, these are the considerations that I need to keep in mind when I'm doing exercise or moving my body. It wanted it to be very, very practical, but without like, I was on another podcast a couple of months ago, and I I know that there's two kind of sides on of the coin in this space. There are people like me who are very, very practical, like this is what you eat. This is, very, very down the line. And then there's a kind of like more kind of woo side of it, which I think is great. It's just not me. I'm not that at all. And I just wanted to bring something for people who are very, very practical, who kind of understood the power of the menstrual cycle, but wanted just to something that they could easily apply to their day-to-day lives.
Mm.
Um, and so that's why I wrote the book. And the title I think has been really interesting. And I love that you made, what you said about it, because when I was talking to my editor about the title, I originally wanted to call it How to Have a Better Period. And she was basically saying, well, why don't you just be more kind of have a more of a stake in the ground? And you can do this. It very like Paul McKenna, like you can get over a broken heart. His books are
Mm.
very much like you can. So um that's that's basically what I just stake in the ground, that to just show that it is possible. It's not about
Mm.
having a perfect period, a painless period. It's just having a better period.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of the story of the book.
Mm. Thanks for sharing that. I love that. And I think that I hear you as well. Like it's not about having a perfect period because, what is the perfect period in this modern world? It's like we can't just all take, days off and kind of do nothing and be like fully nurtured and cared for and have no stress. And it's a stress sensitive system. So there's ultimately going to be, potentially things that are showing up for us in our cycle. But what you're sharing in that book is, like you said, you've got it laid out by phase of the cycle. And I love how in-depth it is and how much you've put in there. It's just so rich in information and like you say, practical tools as well, and things that you can do in all these um different aspects and areas as well to support yourself. And I think there's something in there for absolutely everyone who's like, oh yeah, this is something I could really do with looking at and getting some practical help around. um I think it's super helpful and explained really, really easily as well. It's not sort of like bamboozling, words and concepts. It's like, here you go. Here's what you need to do next. I think that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I love hearing that, like, because that's what I was trying to do. Just kind of break it down, be really practical, be really straightforward, and have something in there for everyone in a really realistic way. Because, I read once about this woman. She, on the day one of every period, she checks into a hotel, um, because it's an opportunity, because day one is always really hard for her. But I
Mm,
thought, well, not everyone can do that. That's just not practical. So what can you do instead? What are some
mm,
really, really practical ways that you can just even take it down by 1% on day one or day two of your period?
mm. Yeah, that's so good. And I'm wondering, beyond what we've just shared, like so many people, is it me or are people struggling more and more with their periods these days? There seems to be a lot more. I don't know if it's just that we're talking about it more. we're being educated more, or whether just, with the state of the world being what it is at the minute, whether people are having like more difficult times and different symptoms that have come up. And I've heard just with my clients and my groups of friends that over the start of the year, particularly, everyone's been having like weird cycles. So, there's things that can come up. And I just wondered, from your point of view, um whether you've noticed that there's like an increasing incidence of people having difficult experiences, and what that might be linked to, if there is one.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. I think it's two things. So it's more people are talking about it, and the taboo around talking about your period is starting to shift. Not
Mm,
huge, not like totally, but it is starting to shift. Certainly compared to like 5, 6 years ago. Um, but also the start of the year, if you think about like November, December, this is the time where people are having more parties. They're going out more. It's Christmas, it's Hanukkah, it's more alcohol, it's holiday season, it's richer foods, it's more sugar, it's running around feeling like you need to do everything, and I think last year especially it was a kind of quote unquote one of the first normal Christmas
mm,
post post lockdown, because even last year, because 2020 no 2021 still, like, it was still not great. So last year was the first Christmas where you felt like, okay, things are kind of okay. And so there was a lot more pressure to have like the perfect Christmas and to do
mm,
everything that you couldn't do the previous 2 years. So all of that is just a perfect cocktail for having a really bad period, because what you do in the previous, I'd say 2 to 3 months, is going to be reflected in your period. So November, January, December, December. So periods in towards the end of January, periods in February might be a bit problematic.
mm. Can you tell us a bit more about how that works? So the extra sugar, the extra alcohol, the extra like busyness, how's that impact our menstrual cycle health for people who are listening and don't know this kind of information? Because we're
Yeah,
not taught
so
it at school, are we?
no, we're not, and that is really has to change. Um, you talked earlier about how our periods and our menstrual cycles are stress sensitive, and there are different types of stress. So there is physical stressors. So that could be exercising too much, nutritional deficiencies, um, you know, illness. And then you have emotional stressors where it's kind of trauma. It's like dealing with family issues, work issues. And then you have kind of systemic stressors. So COVID and lockdown being two very, very relevant examples of that. And so the cocktail of all of these different types of stressors creates more inflammation in the body, because the all of this stress tells the nervous system that it's not safe, that there's something going on, and that creates inflammation, where the immune system is acting as though there's a continual threat, because your cortisol levels, they stay persistently high, so the immune system think that there's a threat that it needs to continue to respond to. And I know that inflammation is a real buzzword in the health space right now, but there's a lot of research behind this. This isn't something that, you know, practitioners are just making up. There's a lot of research about the effects of chronic inflammation. And when you're in a state of chronic inflammation, you have high cortisol levels, the body, from a reproductive perspective, thinks, okay, maybe it's not safe to have a regular period. Maybe it's not safe to ovulate. Then on the other side of it, you have more inflammation, means that you're producing more of these hormone like compounds called prostaglandins. And it's those prostaglandins, which we need for lots of different functions in the body, but for menstruation, those are what cause the contraction of the uterus. But if you have too many, that is what's going to make a period more painful. If you're not ovulating, so the body has said it's not safe to ovulate, you are not going to make progesterone. So that's where some people might have experienced more premenstrual anxiety, more premenstrual mood changes, or maybe an exacerbation of anxiety that they already experienced or depression. Uh, so stress has a major impact on our periods. And I don't think a lot of people realize it. It's just that kind of going into this idea that we expect to have a period that is a problem. And I see a lot on social media where people they divide their menstrual month into kind of when things are good. So after their period and after they ovulate, and when things are bad, the week before their period and during their period. And that, I mean, that's a whole other conversation in itself. But, it doesn't have to be like that. And stress and tending to the nervous system can really make a difference. It can make a period better, it can make a period worse.
Mm. That's awesome. What a great answer. Thank you. I think there's so much in there, and I think there's plenty for people to get thinking about. And so like similar to that, I'm curious whether, because we aren't taught like what's normal and not normal, and like you said in when you were sharing your story, you just thought what you experienced was normal until you could see around you what your friends are experiencing. And then you were like, oh, maybe this is different here. And there's so many people who do put up with so many like awful symptoms that they just don't need to, if only they knew what was normal, and what the red flags were to look into. And it's something that, if parents don't know and we don't know and nobody knows, then we all just carry on and suffer, or we'll, like shut our menstrual cycle down, which it doesn't fix things, it just kind of hides it. So I'm just wondering whether you see, like there being like really common red flags that people might experience that can, like, people can listen to and then think, oh, well, I'm experiencing some of those, and, kind of having a think about it and realizing, okay, something's not quite right here. I need to get some help with this. What would the common red flags be?
In the entire menstrual cycle or for
Mm.
period?
Yeah, in the whole menstrual cycle, because I know a lot of people struggle, with different times of their cycle, not just when they're bleeding, and not just the premenstrual time as well. Like, people suffer with all kinds of different symptoms at different times. And so I think bringing that into the conversation as well is really helpful.
This is such an interesting question because something that I have been seeing a bit on social media is this idea that the way that we talk about the four phases is not exactly right. And, people do experience the four phases of the menstrual cycle differently, but I think it's the difference between someone having energy that is slightly lower during ovulation and feeling exhausted during ovulation. That's a red flag, feeling
Mm.
exhausted during ovulation. It's the difference between someone noticing a shift in their mood. So maybe feeling more social or more outgoing after they finish their period as they're going into ovulation and feeling anxious and feeling, very kind of, I think, the kind of different nuances of anxiety before ovulation. That's a red flag.
Mm.
Feeling, getting sick, feeling around ovulation, feeling, seeing like more kind of allergy type symptoms around ovulation. Those are all red flags for me to say there's something going on here. And so there's a difference between saying that we have this framework that we talk about the four phases of the menstrual cycle, and there'll be nuances in the way that everyone experiences those four phases, which is fine. We're not all the same. We all have different, there's like bio individuality, but
Mm.
normalizing feeling exhausted during ovulation, normalizing um, feeling like all the premenstrual symptoms and like normalizing that, I think that's an issue. You know, I kind of think that it's very cultural, but it's also something that I'm seeing in this menstrual cycle space, this kind of normalizing not only the fact that everyone has a different experience of the phases, but normalizing the kind of what I as a practitioner would see as a red flag. You know,
Mm.
I get that not everyone is going to have a burst of energy around ovulation, but you shouldn't feel bad. Like you shouldn't feel bad around ovulation. That's a sign that there's an issue around detoxification. You're not all that rise in estrogen and estrogen, testosterone before ovulation. You're not metabolizing those hormones well. What's going on? Is there something that we need to talk going on in the liver? Is there something in the gut that needs to be addressed? Are you having a regular bowel movement? Are you kind of what's going on with the kidneys? Do we need to talk about histamines? Because those have a real, if estrogen and progesterone are out of balance, then those have a real effect on some of those symptoms that I just talked about. Um, so those are kind of like ovulation, right, red flags that I would
Mm.
I would look at. Period red flags. So it's exhaustion, it's pain, like vomiting, throwing up, uh, feeling like you kind of need to have painkillers. It's bleeding through the clothes, bleeding, having to change your period products more frequently than, say, like every 2 hours, every 2.5 hours. It's having a really, really light period. It's having a period that's shorter than than 3 days. That's really interesting actually, because so I've been doing a lot more on TikTok, and having conversations about light periods has been really interesting because, oh, my period is 2 days and my doctor told me that that's normal. Is it normal? Because we have to think about the lining of the uterus and how that builds up. And if you have a light period, a light and a short period, are you building that lining up thick enough? Is there an issue around estrogen? And I know that not everyone is thinking about fertility, but it's not just about fertility. It's about making enough estrogen. And then, so there's the last kind of part where we're looking at premenstrual symptoms. I hate talking about PMS. I think that that's kind of like it's a it's a collection of different symptoms, and it's been bundled together into this condition called PMS. But PMS is just, as I say, a collection of different symptoms that it's not inevitable. You don't have to feel bad right before your period. And people people experience it differently. So it could be pain, it could be craving, it could be bloating, it could be anxiety, it could be depression, it could be issues with the skin. But you PMS is not inevitable. It's not an inevitable part of having a period and having a menstrual cycle. And it really, like, this is one of my major pet peeves. We've talked about one of my pet peeves. This is another. I told you I was being honest today. I'm usually like this right before my period. I get really
That's
honest.
interesting.
Yeah. Um, it's another pet peeve where we're normalized talking about PMSing, or, just talking about, PMS as like an entity, rather than getting really specific about what we're experiencing. Because when you talk to people and you say, well, actually, what's really going on? Let's break it down. Oh, actually, I feel anxious a week before my period, and that's the main thing that I experience. So we have to have a conversation about progesterone, supporting ovulation, have a conversation about gut health. Or actually, what I notice is that I get really bloated before my period, and that's a different conversation. But when you're just lumping it into PMS, you're not. I think it's a real disservice. You're not able to get specific and give yourself the real support that you need.
That's an awesome answer. I just love that so much. Thank you. I really appreciate what you said there about, like, so, the main takeaways I've got from that, just to summarize, is like what you said there about PMS. Like, can we stop going, oh, if it's just PMS, I've got PMS. Like, it's actually different. And you're so right. Like, I hear it all the time too, like how people experience, like you say, completely different things, but we lump it together. And I love from what you're saying from that health point of view, is that they're actually different manifestations of different underlying imbalances or problems that are going on, and they all each have their own different treatment. So I think that's really great. And instead of just being like that time of the month again, and it's normal and we just put up with it, and instead of getting the help we actually deserve to have. And that what you said at the top there as well about, yes, we have different experiences and everyone has their own experience of their cycle, but there's still a range of what's normal and healthy. Like from the healthy point of view, like, yeah, somebody might get annoyed about different things at different times, or somebody might love a part of their cycle and somebody else like doesn't like that part and prefers a different part. But from a health point of view, there's normal parameters of like what's normal. And if you're outside of actually what's healthy, this isn't just something to sweep under the rug. It's something to really something to really look at. So thank you. I think that's so helpful for people to hear. And so I guess what are if you were like, I don't think it's ever this simple, but if you could give some closes to what like the foundations are, like the key foundations for good menstrual health are, that people can kind of, it's not going to be like quick fix solutions and like, there you go, do that and everything's fine. But what kind of areas are these key pillars for good menstrual health?
Yeah. So sleep is a foundation. I think in a lot of people, we talked about quick fixes earlier. We talked about supplements. And yes, they're incredibly helpful, but you kind of have to think of them as a cherry on the top of the cake. But sleep is so important. And it's not just about the length of time that you sleep, it's about the quality of your sleep. We go through this process of renewal during our sleep. So this deep sleep, these like sleep cycles that we go through, we have this brainwashing, lymphatic cleaning that happens, but you have to be in deep sleep for that to take place. Sleep is so important for the liver. And liver health is so important for hormone health. That's where we break down our hormones that our body has used. So sleep is so important for so many aspects of our health. And we have to think about getting a good night's sleep. It starts from when we wake up. And I talk a lot about chasing natural light.
Mm.
And I think in the last 3 years, we've got so used to being on screens, being indoors, and this natural light that we get from being outside, even on a dark day, being outside and seeing like the daylight has such a powerful effect on our brain and our nervous system. So it's that the effect that it has on our sleep, managing cortisol levels. And we talked about the impact of cortisol earlier, but also helping to support melatonin, which is our sleep hormone, but also the effect that light has on our nervous system. You know, the calming effect that light exposure has on helping us make serotonin, which is our happy hormone. When we have enough serotonin, it's so important and stabilizing for our mental health, our emotional health. And, we do have this kind of rise in anxiety. And I'm seeing a lot of that, people talking about how they're so anxious. And I do wonder if a lot of that is not getting enough natural light, too many screens, and really compromising on sleep. So, really focusing on sleep, focusing on supporting your nervous system, natural light, breathing, that simple inhale through the nose and the exhale through the nose that I just has such a calming effect on our nervous system. I think are really powerful foundations for having a better period. Of course, there's so much that I can say about food and movement, but I think just simple things that don't cost any money, those three areas are so powerful. So
Mm.
natural light exposure, getting better quality sleep, and taking a deep inhale and exhale through the nose.
Mm. Love that. That's a really gorgeous answer. And like you say, really, 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 it's available to all of us. And where I fall down at the minute is sleep. I've got three small children, and I'm talking to you and it's nighttime here now, so we can make the time difference work. But I just know that at the minute I'm going through a phase where my kids just wake up and they come in and we're just not sleeping very well. So, and I can feel it. I can feel how it's affecting me in the moment. But yeah, I know it affects me over the menstrual cycle as well. And all comes out, come that late luteal phase and that drop into the next bleed. I can feel that. So yeah, thank you for the reminder. I'm going to do what I can to get some better sleep, but prioritize the breath and the sunlight. I think that's lovely. And it must be hard, in the UK over winter. It's a long winter. It's dark days, and trying to get some sunshine
Yeah,
is a bit
I
of a
don't
challenge.
I don't like it. But even like like going outside, even on a dark day, going outside and just exposure to light. So
Mm.
usually, like in terms of my day, I usually pick up my son, like do this pickup, and my husband just does the drop off. So he's out getting a walk first thing in the morning. And I normally will do something like I'll just go stand in the garden, or I'll like if I'm really busy, I'll just stand and I'll look outside for a few minutes and just try to get outside when I can. But I know I have to, if I'm working from home, I have to go and do the school pickup. But over half term, so this is 2 weeks ago, February half term,
Mm.
I was taking my son to football camp every morning. So we had to be there at 10. So we had to be out the door by about like 9, 9:30. And we would do this lovely walk through this park. And that a week of doing that, I really noticed the difference on my mental health. I just felt so much calmer. And so
Mm.
it was a real case of like properly practicing what I preach.
Mm.
But it really does make a difference.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds lovely. And what a nice way to do it as well, walking him to camp. That's
Yeah,
lovely. Yeah, good
yeah,
tip. Thank you. Okay, so the last thing I want to ask you, because I think this, your podcast, you have a podcast which is called Period Stories, and it's, you have a guest on who shares their story. And I, think that that's really awesome because, I want to ask you, why do you think um women really need to tell their stories about their periods? Why do we need to share that?
yeah. Um, so when I first started thinking about doing a podcast, I kept being told you should do a podcast, should do a podcast. Um, and I didn't know what. I didn't want it to be one of those where I just talk about periods, like in the sense of like, but there's some very practical podcasts out there which are fantastic. But I knew that I would burn out doing that. I thought, well, what else could I do? And then I kept seeing these podcasts coming up around birth stories. And I thought,
Mm,
that's really interesting, and you as a mother will know this, that when it comes to sharing birth stories, women aren't shy about talking about it, especially bad birth stories. You know, I was actually blown away when I was pregnant at how forthcoming women were okay, yeah, this is what happened to me. And I just I can I at a certain point I was like, I don't want to hear it. I just don't want to go into my birth having all of these things in my mind. I don't
mm,
want to hear it. Anyway, that aside, I kept thinking, well, why don't we talk about the stories of our period, especially our first period, because it's just such a moment of transition. And, you're not necessarily becoming a woman per se, but it's a big biological moment. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to have a podcast where, you know, ostensibly it's about the story of the first period, but then it just kind of is an opportunity for me just to have a conversation. And I'm a nosy person, so it was an opportunity for me to just chat to really interesting women. And I've had lots of different women on the podcast, people who work in this space. But, I've had doctors, I've had writers, I've had, just like really just fascinating editors, like really interesting women. And it's just an opportunity to just say, like, we get our period, we need to talk about it, we need to tell our stories, but then there's so many other aspects to our lives, so let's just talk about that.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful idea. And like you say, women need to have a space to talk about their birth stories. I think it's why they do it. It's like need to have a space to be heard and to get it off our chest and to process it. And, as another rite of passage, like menarche, our first period is exactly like that. And so many women can't actually remember it, but there's so much around it that, it's a real imprint with how we feel about our bodies and how we feel about um like having a period and being cyclical. And for some people it is relating to being a woman, and for others it's not fitting into that. But I just got the sense that, like, yeah, people really need to have a place to talk about it. It's so powerful to be able to share and to hear other people's stories as well, to see parts of ourselves that are shared, in the experience, and to understand as well, like the diverse ways people can experience it. Especially if you're working in this space, like understanding that you can learn so much about somebody by understanding how they have their first period. So I think it's super cool. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lanice. Is there anything that you would like to leave us with, a final nugget of wisdom about how people can, if this was something that you wanted to share with people to help them really prioritize their menstrual health, what would that
Yeah,
be?
I think when having a menstrual cycle and having a period is really powerful, and our body gives us a lot of information about what's going on with our health, and the information that we get during our period and across our menstrual cycle is valuable information that we can use to to know more about our overall health. So, we talked earlier about the impact of Christmas and the holidays on periods that women are having, that had in January, had in February. That's valuable information that, the body is saying, okay, actually, you had fun, but it's time to kind of manage your stress a little bit more. It's trying to think about what you eat a little bit more. And when we tune into what our body is telling us, it can have this can have so many important effects on many other aspects of our health. You could be, if you're a mother, it allows you to be a better mother. You can perform better in your job. You can, put yourself out in the world in a different, more effective way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your truth telling today. I've really loved like chatting with you and getting to know you, and I'm sure that everyone's going to find this a really helpful one. So where can people find you if they want to come check out your book, your podcast, your work?
Yeah, so on social media, you can find me. My handle is at Eat Love Move, and that's on all platforms. My book is You Can Have a Better Period, and that's available anywhere you buy books online. My podcast is Period Story, and that's available anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you want to work with me one-to-one, go to my website, www.eatlovemove.com, and you can have a conversation about working together one-to-one. And yeah, just send me a message. I love to chat about all of this stuff. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Well, have a beautiful day. And it's the end of mine, so I'm going to hit sack soon. Thank you so much, Lanice.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening in. If you're loving this podcast and you'd love to help me spread the wisdom shared, please leave a review or rating, or share this with somebody who you think would love to listen in. I'm really passionate about creating ripples of change and getting this information to more women, girls, and people with a cycle so that they can reclaim their cyclic natures too. And if you'd love to dive in deeper with learning more about how to connect with your cycle and rites of passages, come and join our free Wild Flow Circle community, or choose a course and learn with me on my online learning hub. All the links are in the show notes. And until next time, be well and go with the flow of your cyclic nature.